Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
I am excited to announce that the podcast episodes that are specific to the Mountains to Sea Trail are now being sponsored by the MST Guide by Pocket Trails. The MST Guide is the most comprehensive app for maps and navigation developed for the Mountains to Sea Trail, providing unprecedented information and ease of access for day hikers, section hikers, and through hikers. Never get lost again. Updated maps with trail route changes and everything you need from parking areas, camping locations, water sources, and more. Available now for download through Google Play and coming soon for the iPhone. Check it out and download today. The MST Guide by Pocket Trails. Follow the lines in the palm of your hand. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. You are listening to Jester Section Hiker, the premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers. And I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart. This week, we turn our focus toward a long-distance trail in my home state of North Carolina. This trail is 1,175 miles long, traverses 37 counties, 7 national parks and forests, and nearly a dozen state parks and historic sites. A trail that I plan to spend some time section hiking over the next couple of years. And this trail, of course, is the Mountains to Sea Trail. Over the next 3 episodes, you are going to learn more and more about this awesome trail that is so unique and traverses literally from Clingman's Dome in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to Jockey's Ridge on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I can think of no better way to start our path of learning more about the Mountains to Sea Trail than to have on the guest I'm about to introduce you all to here shortly. Thanks for joining me for another week on the podcast, and now on to the show. All right, I am really excited to kick off our journey to learn more about the awesome Mountains to Sea Trail. And as I said in the intro, our guest today, well, I think, is the perfect person to start us off. Please join me in welcoming Executive Director of the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization, Kate Dixon. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Kate.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Listen, I am really excited, and actually I might be ashamed at the same time because the Mountains to Sea Trail is in my home state. I've been on various parts of it, but I have learned so much probably in the past 2 weeks about this awesome trail. And I just want to get the word out there that, hey, listen, this is another option, especially during COVID times. Like, people are really focusing on their home states with all the stay at home or safer at home orders. So Kate, I could babble on and on about the Mountains to Sea Trail, but tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you became the executive director.
Sure. So I have worked in conservation most of my career, but in North Carolina, I moved here in 1990. So 30 some years ago? No, how long is that? Is that?
Oh my goodness.
30 years ago.
Yeah, 30, yeah.
And I just have always just loved the natural world. And also, I'm a hiker. I'm actually not a long distance hiker, but a regular backpacker and day hiker. And what I fell in love with was with the Mountains to Sea Trail is it's kind of a combination of these great passions I have. In my career in North Carolina, I've worked for the Triangle Land Conservancy, which is the land trust that works in the 6 counties in the Triangle. I worked there for 11 years as executive director. I led a big partnership called Land for Tomorrow, which is a partnership that works for more conservation funding in North Carolina. And then I turned to the Mountains to Sea Trail and this organization, because I also, one other thing that I really, really love is working with volunteers. And one thing about this organization is that the volunteers in it are extraordinary, and they were extraordinary before I started. And one of the good things I've done is I have not messed with them. They're doing really amazing stuff. So I just try and.
I don't know, from what I've read and from what I've seen and talking to more people about that, they wouldn't let you mess with them, Kate.
Precisely.
So listen, let's talk a little bit about the logistics of the Mountains to Sea Trail itself for our listeners that are not as familiar with the trail. So when was actually the trail founded?
So the trail, the idea for the trail was first proposed in 1977. And that year there was a National Trails Conference that was held at Lake Junaluska, which is just outside Waynesville.
I've always wanted to know how to pronounce that. I've always called it Junaluska, so it's Junaluska. Okay.
Junaluska, yeah. So at the time there was I guess one thing to say is, and many of your listeners will sort of be aware of the 60s and 70s being this time in the U.S. when there was a huge interest in trails, and the National Trails Act passed. And the same thing was going on then all in states all over the country. And we had at the time, the head of our environment department was a man named Howard Lee, an extraordinary North Carolinian leader anyway, but he gave a speech. He was asked to give a speech at the conference, and he gave this idea of building a trail from the mountains to the sea. And people loved it, really, really loved it. And then there was a lot of energy right at the beginning to make that happen. The thing is that building a trail 1,000 miles across the state is one of the most challenging things you could ever do. So there was a lot of energy at the beginning, a lot of progress, and then things kind of slowed down. And then there was a fear in the 1990s that the state was just going to give up on the idea. And our organization founder was a man named Alan DeHart. And some of your listeners may know his name. He was a big hiking guidebook writer. And he was a professor at Lewisburg College. And he decided that he was going to found the organization. And also, he created a route that took the existing trail sections and then made the road connections so that he could hike across the state. And then he wrote a book about it. So that became our first official route of the MST that we've been just gradually building on ever since. When new trail is constructed, we shift the road route so that there's less and less road walking and more and more trail. And so as an organization, we've been around for 23 years, and this is the 43rd year of the proposal of the trail.
Okay. And one of the things we're going to talk about, the 43rd year, and one of the reasons we're having you on in September, we'll get to a little bit, because it's the Mountains to Sea Trail birthday, and we are going to honor that. But so with that being said, we know that the trail's in North Carolina. Now, I did read that it's about 1,175 miles in length. Is that still true from terminus to terminus?
Yes, that's still true. Mhm.
And one of the things that really amazed me that I was like, wow. So the trail goes through 7 national parks, nearly a dozen state parks and historic sites. So 7 national parks. I didn't even know North Carolina had 7 national parks. So that itself is amazing.
I'm thinking it's actually 7 national parks and national forests. It goes
Okay, so combined.
combined. Yeah. Yeah.
And okay, so you've done an awesome job giving us some information on how this was founded. Alan DeHart, amazing. And I need to get my hands on that original book, by the way. So just so people know, right now is the trail about half in the mountains. It starts in western North Carolina at the famous Clingman's Dome in Great Smoky Mountains National Park and ends in eastern North Carolina at Jockey's Ridge on the coast. So would you say it's about half trail, half road? Where are we at right now?
It's actually about 61% trail.
Yay!
And actually what that means is some of that is also like some of what I'm counting as trail is like you may be on the beach or you may be on unpaved forest roads or you may be on, there's some shorter sections of paved greenway, but it's 61%, 720 miles, something like that, that's off-road.
And let's talk about the road for a second. So most people, including myself, are like, okay, no, I really don't, I'm not interested in hiking a trail that has a lot of road. But I'll be honest with you, I have recently changed my mind about that because the road is a challenge. And from what I know about the Mountains to Sea Trail, what I'm learning, some of the road sections have some of the best trail angels. Is that true?
Oh, it's really true. One of the challenges in doing the Mountains to Sea Trail is that there isn't just established campsites all along, like you would think on the AT, for example. And so in order to make it possible to do the whole thing, we've found people we call trail angels all over the state. And some of them, like you'll walk right up to their house on the trail. And then we have some trail angels who you can call and they'll shuttle you to get you where you need to go. So it's kind of a combination. But I think one of the things that people really love about doing the MST is the people they meet. We just have this extraordinary community family of people all over the state.
And it sounds amazing and phenomenal. And I can't wait to really get involved. I'm really excited to get involved in that. The community piece sounds great. So another thing that I'm learning too, the Mountains to Sea Trail also has what's called a paddle route.
Yeah.
So you could literally hike in the mountains, walk on the road, ride your bike, and take a paddle section. So if somebody decides to paddle, are they actually considered a completer? Is that part of that?
Yeah, so there are actually 2 parts of the trail that you can paddle and it counts for completion. But the main one is the Neuse River in the coastal plain. So the official paddle section for us picks up in Smithfield, and then you go all the way down downstream of New Bern, and you get close to Havelock, and you're right in the Croatan National Forest there, and then the hiking picks up again. And then we also have a short paddle section that's on the Yadkin River from Elkin to Pilot Mountain State Park. So you can either do that as a hike bike on the road, or you can paddle it.
The diversity of the Mountains, the Sea Trail. I mean, come on now. I mean, just learning about this, it's like, okay, I can hike a little bit. I can walk on the road. I can ride on the road, and I can paddle. I mean, it's almost like a triathlon if you want it to be that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I interrupted you. You were getting ready to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say in the coastal plain, the Neuse River paddle route is an option. And then there's also a biking option we call the Coastal Crescent. So there are 2 options in the coastal plain.
And perfect. And we're going to talk about this here in a little bit. The Mountains to Sea Trail website, totally amazing. And there's interactive maps. There's exactly where to go, what books to find, all that wonderful stuff. But one thing that intrigues me, you also have on your site the Trail Angel Network that you brought up, and by segment. And I think one of the things we need to bring, how many segments? So the Mountains to Sea Trail is broken down in segments, and you could compare that to the AT is kind of broken down in states. So how many segments of the Mountains to Sea Trail?
So there are 18, although the paddle route on the Neuse River is a separate one. So we call that actually 16A to 17A because it's filling in for some other ones.
And that Trail Angel Network, amazing. I cannot talk, people are going to get sick of me talking about this, but I cannot talk about that enough because when you go on the website, the Trail Angels with their telephone numbers and how to get a hold of them and all that one is broken down by segment. So how perfect.
Yeah.
And then trail completers. So right now, how many trail actual have gone east to west, west to east and completed the entire trail?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't remember. I'm thinking we're around 120, something like that. In a typical year, this is not a typical year, but in a typical year right now, we're having like, say, 11 or 12 people who complete.
And would you say it's a good mix of, now this seems like a trail to me where you could literally day hike the entire trail. It's perfect for the section hiker. And it's a great trail to kind of cut your teeth and get your feet wet if you think you want to be a long distance hiker. So would you say it's a good mix of people, or would you say this trail favors one or the other?
Well, I would definitely agree. It's a perfect trail for section hiking. But interestingly, I'd say it's probably half and half. In terms of our completers, it's about half and half.
Perfect. All right. So everybody out there who wants to section hike these big long distance trails, and, you know, I want to do that as well. There's no reason for you to start searching information on the Mountains to Sea Trail and cut your teeth on that. Kate would love it, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, Kate. So let's get in now that we know a little bit about who you are. We know how the Mountains to Sea Trail got founded, and we know some logistics about it. So I'd like to really get into kind of the meat of our interview. And I want to let the listeners know that the main reason I reached out to you was basically your last newsletter that you sent out to your subscribers. And I think the name of that, it's called Trail News from the Mountains to the Sea, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You wrote an article, and I'm going to read a little bit of that. You said that the Mountains to Sea Trail is a trail built for times like these. And that was actually the title of the article. And that really drew me in. And you said that although you wrote that title back in March, and then you said, although this feels so much different now than it did back in March, the Mountains to Sea Trail has held steady, bright, and hopeful through it all. And I want to read some stats that you put in that trail news, and then we'll talk about them. So since February 2020, you have sold over 500 copies of the new Day Hike Guide, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. You have 116 more members, I'm assuming paying members to the Mountains to Sea Trail than you did in February 2020. And this number, the next number I'm going to read, is really phenomenal. 1,800 new email subscribers since February 2020. So let's break this down. So talk about that title of the article and where that came from. And then we're going to talk about some of these stats.
Well, it has been a time when it's been extraordinary, and not just for the Mountains to Sea Trail, but people have poured outside in this time, just wanting to get, I think, the solace of being in nature. It's been really so meaningful to people. And, just thinking back to March, and it was so sort of devastating, but also extraordinary to see state parks have to close because there were so many people going. People just need time in nature. And I heard from so many people who said, I'm turning to the Mountains to Sea Trail all the time. That's where I'm going. And then it's been so amazing to see it continue. I feel like March seems like it happened so long ago. It's a little bit hard to remember how it all was. And yet still, I want to be outside. It's what I want right now. So that's sort of the things that I was thinking about.
And I think one of the things that maybe prompted people that were planning long distance hikes and planning various things. And, a lot of through hikers were planning to go out on various trails. A lot of section hikers were planning to hit the trails. And I think all of a sudden it was like, no, don't go out on the trail. No, don't go here. No, don't go there. And then all of a sudden it was like hikers were like, well, what am I supposed to do? No one's ever really told me not to go hiking before. So I think one of the things, so as the executive director, in your mind, to me, it appears on the website, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, from the get-go back in March, you laid out the groundwork. You laid out guidelines. One of the things I read was, yes, we welcome you to the trail, but please don't go to the populated areas. If parking areas are overcrowded, have a plan B, C, D. So what was your goal from the beginning, or how did you pull your crew together and say, this is how we are going to proceed going forward?
Well, one thing I will say is that with the network of national and other long distance state trails, there was just a lot of information sort of passing back and forth among all the different groups. So you saw like something that you might not have been thinking about. All of a sudden you saw that some other group was, and it was like, oh, well, that's kind of important. So I really think we were all learning from each other. So, and I think I really used like seeing stuff from Ice Age Trail, which is the trail in Wisconsin. They're always so impressive. And I think so that was kind of how we did it. And then really talking with the staff and board members chiming in and knowing what was one of the things this is true probably for all the long distance trails, but we have, I think it's like 70 different either land managing agencies or local government entities that we deal with the trail. It's just such a huge network. And so following, what's closing and what are they doing and whatever. So there really was this just intense back and forth, learning from each other, trying to figure out what to say. So that was how we came up with it.
I just think one of the things that is impressive is, to me, I actually did go back and do my research and started looking at Facebook posts and Instagram posts, back when it seems around March 16th through the 19th is when that was I'm gonna call it the COVID explosion. Very consistent. Okay. State guidelines, like you said, state parks, if you're going to go out on the trail, it's like the Mountains of Sea Trail opened their arms, but gave very clear, if you're going to go out in this area, look at these guidelines. This is what you need to look at. If the Smokies are closed, obviously you're not going out on the Mountains of Sea Trail. And I think people are willing, or were willing, to accept that in a more open arms fashion, because you got 116 new members, you got 1,800 new email subscriptions, and you sold 500 copies of this new day hike guide. So are you attributing this open arms mentality to that? Or what do you think, Kate?
Well, I do think people were just looking, and a lot of people who didn't know about the trail, maybe they were just like Googling trails or whatever, but all of a sudden we became more visible. It was really clear at the beginning that people wanted to hear from us. Like just the number of people reading our emails just like popped up. Really just sort of off the charts. Like the very first email I sent out about what were the COVID guidelines, the viewership of it was amazing, and the number of people who emailed back and whatever. So, and it was just so lovely to hear from people at that time.
Well, let me ask you this. Did that make you nervous? Did you all of a sudden, as the director, go, oh my goodness, okay, do we need to take steps back? How did that make you feel as moving forward with the guidelines and things?
Well, one thing actually that happened was that the very first guidelines we put out, it was before so many sections of trail closed. And I think the first big email that I sent out said, well, you need to be safe when you're on the trail, but the trail is open. And then like 2 days after that went out, parts of the trail started closing. And so then we had to send out another email that said, just so you know, it's not true anymore. And then giving people guidance about how to how to find information. Like we were keeping our website up to date every time we knew about something closed, and we encouraged people to tell us stuff. So we were hearing from a lot of people. And actually, one thing I remember was that Jim Grody is our staff member who keeps all of that stuff updated. And after we had posted the guidelines on the website, he went in to make some change to it. And because initially, I think we had in the guidelines, it said, this trail is closed and that trail is closed. And then we put that somewhere else. Like when you're in there, you can link to it. But he went in there, and I think he could tell like how many people were viewing it right then. And it was like there were 50 people who were reading it just at the same time that he was.
Well, hey, Kate, that's a good problem to have, right? That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you another question, something that just popped in my mind, and I think I know the answer. So Kate Dixon, the executive director, does not all of a sudden one day go, nope, we're just going to close the Mountains to Sea Trail. Kate has a lot of people to talk to, landowners, Forest Service, all that kind of stuff. And I think people get confused on who closes what. So speak about that just a little bit.
So yeah, for us, we don't have any official management authority. We provide volunteers, and we promote the trail. We are the source of information for how to hike the trail, but we are not officially in charge of anything. That's actually different than the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, which has much more management authority than we do. So really, if a portion of the trail is closed, we don't make that decision. We may be very involved in helping to reopen it in terms of our volunteers helping or whatever. So we were just really reporting on what our land managers had decided to do.
And that's good information to know, because I think sometimes people get confused over, power of authority over who's what over the trail. So what I conclude from that is that people might need to do their research based on, who has managing authority, like you said. So that clears things up, especially there's so many trails. There's so many long distance trails and organizations and land management out there. I don't even know how it would be possible for one person to go, yep, we're just going to close all this down and here we go.
Right.
So let's get on to this September birthday month, what I'm going to call it, for the Mountains to Sea Trail and the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization. So you guys do some really cool stuff to get people out on the trail and involved. And for the month of September, you guys are kicking off 4 different challenges that people could do out on the Mountains to Sea Trail. So walk us through those challenges and what people need to do.
Okay, so this celebration takes place in the entire month. The reason for September is that September 9th was the day when Howard Lee gave this speech back in 1977 that suggested creating the Mountains to Sea Trail.
So September the 9th is the official date. Yes.
Birthday, yes. Okay.
And that's why now I know. So here's a little sneak peek for the next couple episodes. We're going to have a section hiker on, and that's why I know now she completed on September the 9th. That was very important to her. So you've given me a little clue.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first challenge has to do with our new day hike guide, which was published by UNC Press in March, just as everything was shutting down. But it's frankly, it's just a beautiful book. It was written by his title is Trail Resource Manager, Jim Grody, and it has 40 day hikes across the state. And the idea of it was to highlight really special places in each of the segments. So it's really a way to see in shorter day hikes, really experience what this trail is like and really get a flavor of North Carolina.
And I have that book right here in front of me. And I tell you, I hope I'm one of the 500. I may have bought my book too late, but I may be one like 510 or something like that. It is phenomenal. It very colorful maps, like even trail coordinates, how to get to trailheads, what you're going to see during those hikes. And I'm going to give it a little plug. You guys might be hearing more little about this on the next episode. So phenomenal book. Okay. So that's number one, is to get people to get out on one of the 40 or more of the day hikes.
And actually, just on that, we have another challenge that is, if you complete all 40 of the day hikes, you can apply for completion, and we'll give you a patch, your 40 hike challenge. But so that's challenge number one. Then challenge number two is we identified 3 stretches of the trail, one in the mountains, one in the Piedmont, and one in the coastal plain, that are 43 kilometers in length. So for the 43rd birthday, you do a 43 kilometer. So that's about, what is it, 20 some, I forget exactly how many.
Yeah, almost 20, I think almost 27 miles.
Miles, that sounds right, yeah.
In one stretch, in one go, you want them to do, basically, yeah, okay.
And so if you do one of those, then that's challenge number 2. And challenge number 3 is if you do the triple crown of them, you do all 3 of those challenges. And we have a special award for that. And then
now, CK, you've already destroyed me, because I hear challenge, I hear triple crown, and already I'm like, oh, can I do this? What's happening?
You can.
All right, so there's 3 in the triple crown. I mean, come on, Kate, you're luring people in, is what you're doing.
Exactly.
And then challenge number 4.
And challenge number 4 is a fundraising challenge. So, and you can donate, or you can help raise money. But if you raise $430 or more, then we have another special prize for you. And we have a peer-to-peer fundraising program that you can use to do that if that's something that inspires you. It would be greatly helpful in our work.
I'm telling you right now, I am totally inspired. And I think that anybody, in the surrounding states of North Carolina has easy access to this trail, because basically, from what I could tell, the trail goes right through the middle of the state of North Carolina. And the North Carolina state is not that long. I mean, the width of it is long, but from top to bottom, it's not that long. So very easy access. And like you said, that challenge, one of the challenges coincides with the book, Great Day Hikes on the North Carolina Mountains to Sea Trail. And spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about that book specifically in our next episode. But Kate, what I want to do real quick before I turn it over to you to leave the listeners with something you want to leave them with, let's talk about this website.
Okay.
So one of the things that hikers do, one of the first things we want to do is find out, okay, is there a trail guide? Where's the website? How am I going to get on this trail? So the website to me is extremely organized, and you guys have got to spend a lot of time on this. So talk to us about your approach to the website and how you make it ease of use, so to speak, for anybody that wants to get on this trail.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you like it and find it so helpful. We have worked really, really hard on it. It is very challenging to help people figure out, just as they're starting to learn about the trail, how do you figure out how to get onto, find a long distance trail like that. So there are several ways, there are several things we have set up. One is that we have an interactive Google map. And actually on that, I do want to say that we have had the most extraordinary volunteer named Curtis Bellia, who does all of our mapping. And when he first started about 12 years ago, he started on that Google map and then has continued to do all our other mapping. So you just talked about the great maps in the day hike guide. Those are his maps. The maps that you'll see on the website are his maps. He's just really, really good. But that interactive Google map is a great way to find trailheads in particular. You'll be able to see the overall route and then just there, and you can use it to get directions anywhere you want to go. And then we also have it set up. We divided the trail into the segments that we did, the 18 segments, so that each of them has a there's something sort of cohesive about that particular part of the trail. So if you were interested in exploring North Carolina, it's a cool way to learn a lot about those areas that the trail goes through and about the special things you see on it. There's a part of the website that really delves into those segments. So there's a page on each segment that has a map and lots of information about it. You can also use when you're on that segment guide, segment page, you can say you want to paddle. You're not a hiker, you want to paddle. And there's a way you can sort So it will just pull up the segments where you can do that. And there are a number of different criteria. You're interested in trail towns. You can search for segments that have great trail towns, that kind of thing. So we've just really tried to let you have different ways of finding your information. So something will work for one person and may not work for another, but people do seem to like it a lot. So I appreciate you saying that.
It's absolutely great. And honestly, it's mountains2seatrail.org. I actually will leave it in the show notes, the book information, all of Kate's information in the show notes. And final question, where's the Mountains to Sea Trail organization going from here? Maybe some projects you guys are working on, maybe some sneak things you can give the listeners as far from a director standpoint.
Well, one of our big things is always we're working to move the parts of the trail that are still on road off-road. And the mountains is essentially, there are a few very, very short sections of the trail that are still on road. Most of that 300 miles is continuous trail. Actually, there's about 350 some continuous miles of trail in the mountains. But in the coastal plain and then in the sort of northern Piedmont, particularly sort of north of Winston-Salem and Greensboro, there's a lot of road walking. And we're just really focusing on how to build more trail in those places. In the coastal plain, thanks actually to a really fabulous grant from Duke Energy and then a lot of support from people in the coastal plain, we have a full-time staff person who is focusing on that. And it's been really fun. It's been a part of North Carolina where, hiking just has never been as big a thing in the coastal plain. I think when I started working there and talking to community leaders and saying, we're developing this route and what they would be very nice to me, but I don't think they believed it. They were like, "Oh yes, Kate, you're going to build us a trail. We'll see." But it's really neat to see as we've been making progress and building new trail and making relationships with a lot of the land managing agencies or whatever, and things starting to tip. I think they're starting to really think this could happen. It's pretty cool.
Well, it's happening. I mean, yeah. I will say over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, just getting out in some of the mountain portions, even the different blazing and the ease of use of the trail has changed. So, I mean, I could see things happening. I have not been from the Piedmont to the coast area, and I'm excited about that. So, Kate, thank you for coming on the podcast. And now I think we're at the point where Kate is actually going to sign off for us and leave the listeners with something to think about.
Well, I guess one thing I just want to reiterate, we talked about it a little bit, but one of the things that makes this trail so special is the community of it. It means so much to people who are involved. They love meeting hikers. They love working with each other. It's like this great big North Carolina family with occasional people from other states who we are happy to welcome in too. It's a joyful project that I think just for North Carolina means so much and has so much potential for the future.
All right, Kate, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
I hope all of you enjoyed hearing from Kate as much as I did. It was great to hear more about the Mountains to Sea Trail and to hear things from an executive director perspective. And I hope that you go check out the Mountains to Sea Trail website and think about completing one or more of those birthday challenges for the month of September. I know not everybody has easy access to the Mountains to Sea Trail, but I hope this has encouraged all of you to look into your home state long distance trails and trail organizations and become more involved locally where you are. On next week's episode of the podcast, I have a chat with Jim Grody, who is the Trail Resource Manager for the Friends of the Mountains to Sea Trail organization and the editor for the book, Great Day Hikes on North Carolina's Mountains to Sea Trail. Jim and I talk trail maps, guidebooks, and more. As always, everybody, thanks for listening. Take care and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.